Welcome back to the show. Today I want to share some thoughts with you from a book by Tony Robbins called Unlimited Power. Now, if you know about Tony, he's huge. He's a giant of a guy. I can't remember how tall he is. He's well over 6'4". And when he was a young man, his teacher, his mentor, was the late Jim Rohn. And if you've never heard of Jim Rohn, I suggest you go to his website, Jim Rohn. That's R-O-H-N, jimrohn.com. And he will, there's tons of material in there that can help you in your life. So what Tony did as a young man, he came from a broken family. He came from a situation in his household where they didn't have a whole lot of anything. And he decided to invest money in this seminar by Jim Rohn. Now, I remember he didn't have a lot of money. There were people that would bring his family food every holiday because money was that tight. So he scrimped and saved and decided to go to this event by Jim Rohn. Well, that event with Jim Rohn literally changed his life in a dramatic way. So this book that Tony wrote, he wrote the book several years ago. So I want to jump into a few pieces of this book that I still have to review consistently because I tend to forget some of the stuff that I've read. So what he said in part of the book is that when we look at something, when we go through a difficult time, when we deal with struggles in our lives, it creates images in our mind. And for those who've watched the show long enough, and the shows that we've done over the last few years, you know that around my office I have quotes and signs and reminders that I have to constantly remind myself of certain things, because as you go through difficulties in your life, you're going to have some hiccups, you're going to go through some deep valleys in your life, and sometimes words from people that are a lot smarter than you and I can help you get out of that valley a lot faster. So he says in this book, different representations produce different types of results in your mind. And I don't know if you've experienced it before, but have you ever been trying to go to sleep at night and your mind starts racing? It starts taking you to places that you've been in your past, and then your body reacts in a certain way. That happened to me last night, actually. I was trying to go to sleep, and my mind was racing. My mind was taking me to places that were not healthy for me to get to sleep, if you know what I'm saying. And I think you and I have dealt with that more than a few times. He said on page 98 of this book, he says, once you know how to do things with your new awareness, you can start running your own brain and creating the states that support you. So here's what he really taught that was a major impact in my life. And again, I'm no pro at this by any stretch. I'm still trying to master it. But he said that you can create your own state of mind in which you want to behave. So let me kind of digress a little bit from what I want to share here today. He says in many of his meetings that when you want to feel happy, when you want to feel motivated, you typically are standing tall, your shoulders are back, you're looking forward, your head's up a little bit, so your body reacts to how your body is standing and how you're trying to come across to other folks. And then he said that if you notice that when you're depressed and when you're sad, your shoulders are down, your head's down, you speak in a certain way, and then your body reacts in that way. So I've noticed, at least in my life, sometimes, again, I'm not a pro at this, but I'm still trying to work on those things, that when I want to feel motivated, when I want to feel proactive, when I want to feel focused, I tend to try to, the old saying is fake it until you make it. That's kind of like where I'm going with this idea. So if you are depressed, if you're struggling with many things in your life, sometimes if you act in a way that you want to feel, then sometimes you're going to feel the way that you're beginning to act. So he goes on to say on page 100, he said you have to identify the behavior that you want to change. Again, identify the behavior that you want to change. I don't know about you, but I'm trying to get better and better every day. It's an uphill climb, I have to tell you flat out, because I've gone through some stuff in my life, and I bet you have gone through some stuff in your life that's not very pleasant. And it seems like you get kicked in the gut over and over again. And when you get kicked in the gut over and over again, sometimes, especially when you feel like you've been kicked in the gut more times than not, sometimes it's pretty difficult to keep getting back up again. But he says that you have to identify the areas that you want to change. And what most people don't do is most people don't do that. Most people take life as it comes, as if they're on some ocean and the waves are taking them from here to there, instead of them dictating where they want to go in life. He says this. He says, once you have a clear picture of the behavior you want to change, you need to create a different representation, a picture of yourself as you would be if you made the desired change and what that change would mean to you. Now, I've told you before on this show that doing these shows in the beginning were terrifying. I mean, I'm the last guy that should be in front of a camera. Now, I don't mind being behind the camera, but being in front of the camera, that's the last place I could imagine myself being. So I had a conversation with my friend Paul, and Paul and I have known each other for a number of years, and he says, John, why don't you consider doing some TV shows to help people, to share ideas and concepts with people? I said, Paul, look, I can't do this. I said, I can't even talk right. For those who don't know, I had a major league horrible stutter as a child and well into adulthood, and sometimes it still shows up from time to time, and you may see it in the shows that I do. Sometimes I get stuck on words. So the point is, I would not necessarily want to be in front of a camera because it's humiliating to not be able to speak properly. But Paul enabled me to at least consider some changes in my habits, some changes in some activities that I wanted to do for the benefit of other people. And he says, why don't you just try it? Well, the first few shows we did I wasn't impressed with them at all. There was, it was just, in my opinion, not the best of the best for sure. But I could have stopped. I could have said, bag this, I can't do this anymore. But then I had to keep studying from the people who have really done well in this business. So the point is that I knew that I had to change some behavior internally in order to project an image externally. And think about that in your own life. How many times haven't people looked at you in a certain way because you've expressed something that's internal, some pain, some discouragement, some anger, some frustration that comes out in a way that's not very pleasant? I remember what John Maxwell said one time. He said, hurting people hurt people. Again, hurting people hurt people. And that's really an image of what you and I sometimes struggle with from time to time, not only internally, but in the lives of other folks. So again, he goes back to this book. He says in page 102, our brain tends to move away from unpleasant things and toward pleasant ones. Again, our brain tends to move away from unpleasant things and towards pleasant ones. Now let me just digress and expand that point a little bit more at the same time. The human body tends to want to run away from things that are not comfortable. I think you've experienced it. I know I've experienced it more than a few times. I just used the example of being in front of a camera here. That's not my comfort zone necessarily. So we run away from things that we're afraid of. Let me ask you a question or two. How many times have you looked in the mirror and realized that you want to do certain things in your life, but you're afraid to do them because you've never done them before? Or you've seen other people attempt to do these things and they have fallen on their face more than a few times. So then you assume that because they have attempted things in their life means that, and they have fallen, means that you can't do that either. Again, he goes back. He says, our brain tends to move away from unpleasant things and towards pleasant ones. So if you think about that in your own life, how many things have you wanted to do in your life, but because you've never done them before, or because your imagination goes crazy and believes that you can't do certain things, you run away from it. In fact, but way down deep, you really want to do it anyway. So if you think about the times when you've embraced these struggles or you've embraced the challenges of wanting to do certain things in your life, that you're afraid of the uncertainty of what might happen. That's been my struggle for a long, long time. It still is, actually. That I'm afraid of what might happen, and the might happen part is the negative instead of what good things could happen. When I started writing books, I've never written books before, So, but I decided that I felt like I should start writing inspirational books. I started writing inspirational books, and folks started talking about it. Started doing a weekly email. It goes around the world. Who am I? Well, several thousand people get the email every week. So the point is that if you don't attempt to do certain things that's outside of your comfort zone, then the stuff that's outside your comfort zone will never be part of your comfort zone. Does that make any sense? So what you're afraid to do really could become your passion in life if you choose to do the things that you're afraid of more consistently. And I think that broad brush covers a lot of other things in our own lives. He says on page 110, he says, the brain delivers pain only when it receives stimuli that are represented in a way that tells it to feel pain. Let me share it again. The brain delivers pain only when it receives stimuli that are represented in a way that tells it to feel pain. He goes on. The syntax, he says, the way we order the actions can make a huge difference in the kind of results we produce. Let me share an example. When I was a kid, I was overweight. I was the last kid to get picked in gym class. Maybe you know some people like that. You had these, I call them jocks in school, the kids that were built well and they were very sports-minded and they could climb the rope to the top of the ceiling in the gym class, and I couldn't get 3 feet off the ground. I'd run out of breath running. We had to, in different years, we had to run a mile in school, and I was just not cut out, at least in my own mind, for being one of those jocks, to be one of those people that, were sports-minded and were in shape. So I had that mindset for probably 25 to 30 years of my life. I thought, that's for other people. Other people are born with these certain genes, I suppose, that help them become more fit. So one day, my son Matthew and I were out in the woods clearing a path, and I took a little hatchet, and I was trying to clear up a little piece of wood here, and I disturbed some yellow jackets. And the yellow jackets swarmed and started attacking my son and I. So Matthew, at the time, he was a teenager, and he started running, and teenagers are faster than most of us. And I was not in very good shape, and I lost the race back to the house. The bees were all over me, all over my clothes, and stinging through my clothes, and this and that. Well, I collapsed on the driveway, trying to breathe, and I realized right then and there that I have to change, because next time I disturb some bees, I want to outrun the bees. So this is going back now probably in 2007 or so, 2006. And ever since, I've been working out for about 4 or 5 days a week. Now, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder by any stretch, but the point is that there was a mindset that I had for 25 or 30 years that there were only a certain kind of people that could get in shape and stay in shape. What I'm trying to tell you today is to maybe rethink what you're thinking in your mind, because when you believe something, when you translate what has happened to you in the past as what may happen in the future, then it really impacts where you're going to go in life. And that's been my struggle for a really long time. He says on page 115, he says, what are the building blocks of syntax, he says. He says the building blocks of syntax are our senses. He says we deal with sensory input in 2 levels, internal and external. Syntax is the way we put together the blocks of what we experience externally and what we represent to ourselves internally. Now let me just pause and kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. There have been people in your life that have deposited information into your mind that now you're living their opinions, their outlooks, their levels of intelligence that they've implanted in your mind as factual. And I think you know some people like that, maybe some people in the mirror that have experienced the negative opinions of other people. Now, those negative opinions of other people have now impacted your life in a way that you're believing what somebody said 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and their opinions, more times than not, are completely wrong about you. So what I'm asking you to do really is to try to rewire your brain. And for me, that's a daily thing, because I have certain struggles that maybe you have certain struggles too, and maybe you need to consistently rewire your own brain. Let me give you another example. I struggle with people that are critical of my intentions. I'll use that in a broad sense. So I have a lot of people online that have attacked me for this reason or that reason, and they assume this or that. So around my office, I have, like I mentioned in the beginning, some quotes that enable me, or remind me is a better way to say it, to look past the critical opinions of other people that really don't know me. How many times haven't you heard opinions about you from other people who've never even met you? And that can play mind games with you, right? Those negative opinions of other people can literally transform the way you operate, transform the way you behave. There's been, I know somebody who had a parent, and I'll be polite in the way I describe it, but he told his son that you're not going to amount to more than a row of rabbit poop. And again, I mean, that's pretty blunt, but that's kind of sort of what he said. So this guy was believing, the son was believing for a number of years that he was not going to amount to a whole lot of anything because of the opinion of what his father said. So I'm asking you today to rethink the opinions, especially the negative opinions of other people. I know it's hard. I know it's because some of the people that have given their opinion about you, the negative opinions about you, or have called you certain things, are people that you care about. Sometimes those people are those that you honor. But at the same time, sometimes those people are people that are wrong. Sometimes those people are going through situations in their own lives, like I said moments ago, that John Maxwell said, that hurting people hurt people. And if you look at the core of what people, of the negative things that people say about you, you have to look right back at them and say, why are they saying those things about me? So people look at things in certain ways, and then they base their lives on maybe what other people have done. Let me give you another example. There are people who believe that they can't achieve certain things because nobody that they know has ever achieved certain things. Think about that. How many times have you wanted to do certain things, or learn a new skill set, or to take a class in college, or to venture out and start a business, but nobody that you know has ever done that? So you stay inside your little comfort zone, your little bubble, and don't venture outside of that because nobody has done that before. Well, maybe you should be the first one who has ventured out of your bubble to do these things that are pretty extraordinary. I'll tell you more times than not that only a fraction of the public will venture out of that bubble, will venture out of that comfort zone to do things that are extraordinary. And part of what makes that possible is that they choose to learn from people who have ventured outside of their bubble, who has ventured outside of what they are comfortable with, because what I said earlier is that the brain is designed to run away from things that are uncomfortable and scary. So if you look back and think at your own life, maybe take a minute or two and write down all the things that you're afraid of, and that you've not been inclined to embrace or to overcome because your mind, Seth Godin calls it the lizard brain. The lizard brain tends to run away from things that are not comfortable. So then when you run away from things that are not comfortable, then you never really achieve things that are great. I know a lot of people that have lived a long time, 60, 70, 80 years, and they haven't really achieved much of anything, because they live a life of fear. They live a life of intimidation. They don't want to push themselves beyond the comfort zone. I can remember years and years ago that I was asked to come speak at a school. And this school was actually where I went to high school. And I'd say 90% of the kids in the class were not even paying attention. So I have to fast forward in my own mind to think, are these kids going to achieve something great? Now I have to admit that when you're immature, like I was at that age, that I didn't even see past my own nose, let alone what I was trying to accomplish in my life long term. So I'm wondering if the people that you choose to hang around are dragging you down, or are you hanging around people that are challenging you and that are pushing you forward? Because those people that push you forward are the types of people that are going to dramatically impact your life in a huge way. That's why the older I get, the more cautious I am about paying attention to the people that I'm hanging around. And I'll be quite frank with you. Some of the people that I have chosen not to hang around are some of the closest people in my life. Now think about that a minute. How many times haven't you been tempted to hang around people because they're family, or maybe they've been friends of yours for a lifetime? I'm asking you to think about the people that are dragging you down, that are putting discouraging thoughts in your mind, or are you hanging around people that are challenging you to step up and to keep moving forward and to push yourself past the pain? That's how muscle is formed, from what I read and learn from bodybuilders, is that muscle is formed when it gets really painful. When you push and push and push through the pain of lifting, that's when the muscle tears, that's when the muscle builds. And I think that's kind of sort of like life sometimes. When you want to do things that are extraordinary, you have to push yourself past the pain of mediocrity. And most people that you run across in life are frankly mediocre. They're average and ordinary. So if you don't want to be average and ordinary, then you're going to have to push yourself consistently past the difficult times in your own life. Tony talks about in this book, he talks about NLP. And when I learned about NLP years and years ago, which is neuro-linguistic programming, he calls it like the nuclear physics of the mind. Now, I'm no math whiz by any stretch of the imagination, but when I realized what NLP did to me, I really reframed and readjusted what I allowed in my own life. Again, I go back to the point of the people that you choose to hang around, the images that you choose to keep in front of you at any given time will dramatically change the way you behave and the way you act. You can't, let me say it another way. If you want to become an eagle, you can't hang around chickens and turkeys. Let me say it again. If you want to become an eagle, you cannot hang around chickens and turkeys. That's just common sense to me. But it took me, I'm embarrassed to tell you, quite a number of years to get that through my thick head. That I chose to hang around chickens and turkeys because at the time I felt like I was a chicken and a turkey. Although I looked at the eagles way over there and I realized that maybe I can't be an eagle, maybe I thought I couldn't be an eagle, but then I woke up one day and realized, wait a minute, eagles hang around eagles. So I had to look at myself differently, and maybe you need to look at yourself differently too, that if you want to be an eagle, then you need to learn from the eagles. Does that make any sense? So I would challenge you today that if you want to become like people that are extraordinary, that are like the people that you see on TV, you think that all the people on TV have all their stuff together and all their ducks are lined up in a row and everything's perfect in their lives. But that is not the case. I mean, if you read the bios of these people, some of them, they have some real struggles. I mean, there's some people with learning disabilities, they're billionaires, they have people with massive amounts of phobias, and they're millionaires. Some people are CEOs of corporations, and they have struggles that I can't even discuss. But they choose to continue to move forward and to surround themselves with people that will complement their strengths and help them with their weaknesses. That's the thing that it took me a long time to learn also, is that do I want to invest so much time trying to get better at something that I'm bad at, or find some areas that are semi-strengths, that maybe are areas that I want to be stronger in, and build that up? So think about that in your own life. There are some things in your life that maybe you should delegate or even not do at all. But there's one or two or three things that you might be really good at. Why don't you invest the time in those areas? And then those areas can dramatically change your life in a big way. And not only your life, but frankly, the lives of people that you may never even meet. So I challenge you today, as we wind down this show in a few minutes here, to choose to hang around people that are strong, that you choose to hang around people that read about people that are going places in life, because that's really important too. Choose to hang around people that have built habits in their lives, that have created the environment for them to grow and blossom in their own world. And then on the flip side of that coin is you have to choose to not get around people that are whiners and complainers and don't know that they don't know. Let me say it again. You have to stay away from whiners and complainers and people that don't know that they don't know. Because the people that don't know that they don't know will never go anywhere in life. The people that know that they don't know, there's some hope for them. So now that you know some tips that I learned from Tony Robbins, who I've read several of his books over the years, I hope some of the ideas in this show today will give you a tip or two that can help you keep moving forward in your life. My name's John Carver. I appreciate you watching the show, and we'll be back really soon. Thanks so much.